Today, we're going to tackle a really interesting question about policing in Canada's easternmost province. We're breaking down exactly how law enforcement works in Newfoundland and Labrador. So let's just dive right in with the big question. Who's in charge of keeping people safe in Newfoundland and Labrador? Is it the famous Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RMCP, or is it some kind of local force? Well, the answer isn't a simple yes or no, and it actually reveals a pretty unique system. Okay, let's not beat around the bush. The short answer is yes, the RCMP is absolutely there. But the real story isn't if they're there, it's how. Their role is all part of this very distinct and really vital partnership. To really get a handle on this partnership, you've got to meet the two key players on the ground. So let's break down who they are. First up, you've got the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, or the RNC for short. Now, this is the provincial police force, and their job is super specific. They're focused on the province's biggest urban centers. Think of them as the city police. And then, of course, we have the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP. They're a federal and national force, sure, but in Newfoundland and Labrador, their job is basically the flip side of the RNCs. They cover pretty much everything else, the rural areas, the smaller towns, and the Indigenous communities. So, what you end up with is this system built on a really clear division of labor, and it's almost all based on geography. It paints this fascinating picture of urban versus rural police coverage. And this right here really makes it crystal clear. You see the RNC covering the main cities, St. John's, Brook and Labrador City. Meanwhile, the RCMP is responsible for all the smaller municipalities, the Indigenous communities, and those huge, vast landscapes that really define so much of the province. But listen, the RCMP's job is so much more than just patrolling the countryside. They handle provincial law enforcement through a contract with the government. They uphold federal laws like border security. And, this is huge, they focus heavily on community policing, which is all about building strong, trusting relationships with local residents. But here is the most important part. These two police forces don't just stay in their own separate zones. No way. They actually have a deeply collaborative approach because they know they're way stronger when they work together. So what does this partnership actually look like on the ground? Well, for one, they create joint task forces to go after big problems like organized crime. When there's a natural disaster or a major emergency, they coordinate their response to keep everyone safe. They even show up to community outreach programs together, working as a team to build trust across the whole province. One of the sources we reviewed just nailed it with this quote. It says, the coexistence of the RCMP and the RNC allows for a division of labor, ensuring that both urban and rural areas receive specialized and adequate policing services. I mean, what that really means is, it's all about getting the right kind of policing to the right places. Simple as that. Okay, so let's tie this all together. Now that we've seen how it all works, what's the final verdict? What's the big takeaway from this dual force system? The takeaway is actually pretty straightforward. Yes, the RCMP definitely serves Newfoundland and Labrador. They work side by side with the RNC in what's called a complementary system, where each force has its own clear role. Together, they make sure everyone is covered, from the busy streets of St. John's all the way to the most remote coastal communities. And that just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This system works really well right now, but we all know the world is constantly changing. So the big question for the future is this. As technology advances and community needs evolve, how is this unique policing partnership going to adapt to keep Newfoundland and Labrador safe?